Hi everybody, FPL Witty here, back for another of my regular FPL videos. Hope you're well. We're back out here in the sunny winter Yorkshire countryside today. Didn't envisage it being this cold. I've got my parka on today. When I set off doing these videos in August, we had hot heat waves, and we're now doing these in January, but it gets me out of trouble, gets me out in the fresh air. So the aim is to do these certainly once every game week, just have a 15-minute slot where we have a look at FPL, have a look back on the last game week, have a look ahead, and have a look at some of the key talking points really, and certainly lots to cram in today. So hope you had a good game week 20. I'm recording this on Friday, so we've had game week 20 out the way. We've got one rest day and we're straight into game week 21 on Saturday. So it's quite an eventful game week 20 just gone really, wasn't it? We had a double game week for 4 teams, and as is often the case with these double game weeks, it was a bit underwhelming and didn't necessarily go to plan for a lot of key players. None of the 4 teams that were doubling managed 2 wins. Spurs actually had 2 defeats. None of the 4 teams kept a clean sheet between them, and how often are defenders and particularly goalkeepers the stars of double game weeks, but not this time. We had popular players like De Bruyne and Kane only managing an assist between them across the 2 games, and in the end it was Bruno Fernandes, wasn't it, who joint top scored for the game week. He was him and Mahrez, Bruno and Mahrez were the stars of the double game week, so well done if you managed to get one of those 2. Of course, a lot of people played triple captain this week on Haaland after his form. It has dropped away a little bit, we have to say, but certainly his form over the season generally. First opportunity for a double game week for Haaland, and I think a lot of people will be disappointed, the ones that triple captained Haaland. I triple captained him as well myself. My rationale, I think the rationale for triple captaining or not triple captaining were both pretty compelling really. I think you could build a case for both. My thoughts around Haaland were that we were dealing with a known instead of future unknown, so who knows when Haaland's not going to be fit or is fit. And I thought against 2 strong opponents there was a very good chance of him playing 90 minutes times 2, and that was the case. City got 5 goals across those 2 games, so perhaps a bit unlucky that he only got 1. And I also thought, of course, that his chief supply line, Kevin De Bruyne, would be nailed on to play 2 times 90 as well against strong opposition, but there was obviously an injury there or some problem, and that no doubt did impact Haaland. So it is what it is, just the 8 points. We've had worse triple captains, so we shall see how good that is when other people play theirs later in the season. You have to think when other people do play the triple captains that even if they get, say, 20 points and rack 60 points up, then as long as you own that player you can still get 2/3 of those points. So in reality, when you put it like that, even if somebody gets a 20-pointer and later in the season against that 8, you're still only a 12-point difference, so certainly not season defining. So yeah, there was lots to talk about last week. All the headlines were from Mitrovic really, and his yellow card in the double game week. That was all the headlines. This time it was Mitrovic again. He got an opportunity for a penalty right at the end against Newcastle, and of course he 2-footed it into the goal, so it was classed as a missed penalty. So very, very unfortunate. I'm laughing because I'm a Mitrovic owner, but sometimes you've just got to laugh at these things, haven't you? Very costly for me because of course the double Newcastle defence is quite popular, and it would have wiped that out, and Mitrovic would have had an extra 9 points including bonus, so that was a hugely significant moment really for a lot of people. We had 2 derbies, didn't we? We had Arsenal completely taking Spurs apart. I thought they really, really enhanced their title credentials with that victory. They looked very impressive. And we had Manchester United getting revenge for their 6-3 defeat earlier in the season against their neighbours at City, and controversy in this one as well, really, with that goal from Bruno that completely changed things, and whether or not Rashford was interfering. Again, I think you can build a case both ways. Personally, I don't think that game would have happened unless Rashford had played the little part that he did in it, so it's certainly controversial, but it is what it is. And we had Solly March destroying Liverpool, didn't we? And Tony scoring a bit of a controversial penalty as well. So I think certainly it was an eventful week. Quick look at my game week, and then we'll have a look ahead, because there's certainly lots to talk about. So I had a slightly disappointing week, really. I had a small red arrow, a small rank drop. I scored 78 points, but I did take a -8. I took a -8 really with the intention of making sure that I own both Harry Kane and Kevin De Bruyne, who were both potentially explosive players that I didn't own, both on double game weeks. So with a high ownership, if one or both of those had gone off in the double, I would have been in big trouble. So bit of a rank protection move. They only managed 1 assist between them, but the good thing is that the 3 players that I took out, Darwin, Salah and Cancelo, they all failed. So pretty good move really overall, and I was up on the deal. So yeah, I only had 6 returners. I mean, highly owned players like Rashford and others. So it was only really the Kepa points really that made a big difference for me. When you look at the hard luck stories, plenty of those. The Mitrovic penalty was a bad one. I was sat on a 9-pointer from Akanji until Manchester United got that controversial equaliser. So lots of hard luck stories. If Haaland had have had another goal, Mitrovic had have converted his penalty, I'd have been probably on a massive green. So it's a game of fine margins, isn't it? So a little bit disappointing. My rank dropped this week from 160,000 to 170,000 roughly. So a small red arrow, and it's disappointing to get a red arrow when you play your triple captain, but by the same token I did take a -8. So bit of a meh week really for me. So we move on, but yeah, there's absolutely loads to think about now. Game week 21, we're straight on. Unless we get a late double game week announced, then it's going to be a single game week now for all 20 teams. So that's quite unusual, really. But I think the advice generally this week will be to roll your transfer. There's some very, very strong reasons why you should, unless you've got a player with a broken leg, of course. But the reason is that after this game week 21, we've got a bit of a break. We've got an 11-day gap, and in that period we will have both legs of the EFL semi-finals. We'll have the FA Cup 4th round, and we'll know the FA Cup 5th round draw. So when you piece all that together, that has quite massive implications really, and as regards to possible double game weeks that might get announced, but also the EFL Cup final in game week 25, because if that goes to form and Manchester United and Newcastle get to the final, then we'll have Manchester United, Newcastle and their opponents Brentford and Brighton blanking. So I think there's a lot of people a bit vulnerable there. If you're not careful, if you bring teams in from those 4 teams without knowing that, then you could easily end up with 6 or 7 players missing come game week 25 and spend the next few weeks trying to shoehorn those players out of your side instead of using those transfers to maximise the double game week. So I think the key will be this week to roll your transfer if you can, and then we'll know a lot more by game week 22. We'll know which 4 teams are blanking in 25, which teams are probably going to blank in game week 28 for the FA Cup quarter-finals, and we'll probably get confirmation of which teams have got a double game week as well. There's a strong chance that Manchester United and Leeds get a game week in 22 if they avoid FA Cup replays. So lots of reason to hold your transfers this week, and I think certainly when you look at the vast amount of information that we'll know about at the game week 22 deadline compared to what we know now, I think the value of those two transfers will be pretty significant to me. So that will probably be my plan this week, but we'll see. Things always crop up at the last minute, don't they? So in terms of this week, I might roll my transfer, we'll see, but some big decisions really. I think Kepa or Danny Ward will be a bit of a 50-50 for a lot of people. Both are expected to not keep a clean sheet, but if you're following the clean sheet odds, then Danny Ward is the play. So I'm 50-50 on that one. I might edge towards Kepa at the moment, but that could easily change. Kepa plays away at Liverpool, Danny Ward plays Brighton, so you can't really see a clean sheet for either, but could come down to save points. That's a tough one. And then I think we've also got this 50-50 with Ben White and Luke Shaw. The two sides meet each other, of course. Arsenal, Manchester United. Hard to see Arsenal not scoring really in that game, isn't it, with the form that they're in. Manchester United without their defensive midfield star Casemiro, so I think the odds again favour Arsenal keeping the clean sheet more likely than Manchester United, so I'll probably go with Ben White over Shaw for that reason. But then again, you could argue that Luke Shaw is the one with a greater attacking threat, so that's certainly not an easy one either, is it? So certainly lots of 50-50s to think about this week. Thing about that game, of course, is that Ben White has a tendency to get subbed off early, so maybe that's a good thing. If he gets hauled off between 60 and 70 minutes, might even bag his clean sheet, so that's a tough one. I'll probably still stick the armband on Haaland this week, so he's got Wolves at home, so pretty hard to look against that. But I suppose if you fancy Harry Kane to score at Fulham, he's always got a few goals in him, hasn't he? So yeah, there's certainly lots to think about. But as I said, the key will be to have as much flexibility as you can, I think, going into game week 22. So certainly there's a lot of information to come. So it's a Saturday deadline, so don't miss the deadline. Saturday 11 o'clock deadline. I'll be back to do another game week review and another catch up at the end of game week 21. But if you want to follow my team more closely, I write weekly articles for Fantasy Football Geek website. You can follow me on there, and you can follow me on Twitter at FPL Witty. So yeah, I hope you have a good week. The sun's shining, so I'll carry on my walk, get some fresh air in my lungs, and I'll be back for another 15 minutes next week. So all the best, and as they say in Barnsley, I'll see it.